It's a treat to be on this stage in hometown Toronto. This is gratuitous product placement, Flow Water. Partly because I'm a big fan of Elevate. You know, the idea of bringing together the world's innovators to solve society's greatest challenges, as Razor shared a few days ago on the stage, is profoundly important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about retail today, of course. That's why you're here. But I'm also going to try to connect it to something more profoundly human, which is what's happening in the world and how do retailers participate in thoughtful ways within that to the benefit of their businesses and shareholders. So let's talk about what it means to be human in a retail context and how that has commercial gravitas. And there is a way of thinking, I think, differently given what's gone on in the world of consumerism and supported by enablement by technology as we've never seen before. So let's just break it into three parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about then, the evolution of retail to get us to this point, what's happening now, and why there's a lot of folks either seeing tremendous opportunity and chasing it, but also folks, particularly legacy players, that are being disrupted in profound ways and struggling with that. And then what's coming next? And I think the next for me is perhaps a little surprising from where we've been, what's going on now, but what's becoming possible. So let's jump in. So then, just for fun, in 10 seconds, this is the entire evolution of retail. Given that you can process probably not quite as quickly as our technology enables us, I'm going to break it down into releases. So 1.0 in retail. This was, of course, people gathering to barter and trade. And what was actually taking place in that experience was something, of course, to do with goods. You know, I need this, I have this, let's exchange that. And currency was born as part of that. You know, I'm not going to actually give you a goat for that dress, but I will, you know, give you currency, and we have that in common. But in this was something profound, and that was the act of commerce in retail back then was a very human experience. It was people gathering together. So what else happened when this was going on? Oh, I see my neighbor over there. What's new with you? I see things that are new. Oh, wow, I didn't even know that existed. And that was something profoundly important. And you see retailers today, as we'll talk about in a minute, chasing that idea of experience that goes beyond just simply efficient transaction. So that was 1.0. 2.0 was kind of the formalization of that for everybody. You know, the birth of department stores, the birth of the mall. The idea that people would gather and see things that were new, but also gather and be connected to one another, as well as merchandise, as well as retail brands that are hosting. And then there was a series of, you know, mini releases, if you think about it that way, the birth of the specialty store. Department stores as anchors, malls with all that space in between. You know, 1969, along comes Gap, and many, many others that filled out, you know, those boxes. But the difference was, that wasn't a place, that mall full of specialty stores and department stores wasn't a place that was next door in my village, my immediate community. That was a place that I went to. And so now my human connection is changing. I'm going further afield to find and discover what I want. Along comes big box. It takes it even to a further extent. Not everyone is gathering in one place, but we're going to isolated choices. Specialty stores, although isolated as individual propositions, at least were in an assortment, and you could ping from one to the other. Then comes along big box, which is much more, I dash in, I get what I want, in a self-service environment. Guess what happens in self-serve? Maybe I'll have human interaction at the checkout. But then, of course, the evolution of retail brings, guess what? Self-checkout. And then we keep going on this journey. The boxes get bigger. They become even more what I would call dehumanized. The idea that this is about efficiency. Big boxes housing everything you'd want at a really great price. Really about the idea, the core idea of store, which is to house goods that you need. Come and get them, make it as easy as possible. Out you go to your car, back to your home. Maybe you watch television and not talk to your neighbor. And then we started to see a little bit of pivot, the return of small box, in this case, discount. And of course, there's many, many chapters and dimensions here that I'm not going to go into in detail, but small box, a little closer to home, in this case, a value example. But the reemergence of drugstores is something important. If you saw the evolution of Shoppers Drug Mart, it went from this is a place for prescriptions and health-related merchandise to this is my life in a box. You know, we've seen that in some of our work as well. So where does this kind of lead us to? The emergence of 3.0, which is the intersection of two forces, two powerful forces. One, the one on the left, is about 25 years old. The one on the right, which is consumerism, and by technology, of course, I mean putting in people's hands, not just corporations' hands, but in people's hands, the ability to do everything that formerly would have had to be done for me. And now I actually have that power. Consumerism has been going on a lot longer, centuries old. What we have been doing as people involved in commerce and branding and retailing and manufacturing and CPG is teaching consumers how to shop, how to find something interesting, something relevant to them, something that would be a value to them and would stand up against comparison with other propositions. But what happened when technology met consumerism was we put in their hands the most enabling platform or facility for them to do that and become these incredible ninjas of how to find out what's new, compare it to what else is new, decide whether it's for them or not. You know, there used to be a day, if I lived in that village, whatever I would find 100 meters from my hut was what I had to choose from. You know, when was the last time you Googled something as simple as shoes? Right? You've got a lot of choices, and so the dynamics started to change because of that technology. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I want to set it up as a foundation for what 3.0 is. That's simply, you know, that ability to get what you want, when you want, in the form that you want, compare it to others, and decide that's for me, and so on. And so, you know, this looks like a promotion for Amazon, but it's the poster example of this 3.0 moment that we're in. But I would liken this is not that different than what Walmart did to the world of retail back in the early 80s. It just simply reframed what is possible. In that case, it was cost efficiencies and resetting the pricing floor. And so on, Amazon is resetting the transactional floor, the way that we can interact with retailers. So where does that take us now? What's the consequence of 3.0? Well, if you're a legacy retailer that certainly wasn't built like Amazon and didn't, you know, necessarily think that getting away without profit for a long time was an option, you are in this moment of unbelievable change, obviously. You know, how do you take a legacy system, a legacy platform? I'm talking about, you know, in some cases, not only technological platforms, but physical networks, and say, well, that was yesterday, and if it no longer works, it's a boat anchor on my business's ability to generate profit. And the trouble with the new age, the 3.0, is there are very few folks in retail today that are making any money on online direct delivery. The only thing that makes money generally in retail is stores. And so while the new world, while consumers are pulling towards and jumping in, it's actually jumping into something that is ineconomic for most retailers. So they're figuring that out. So massive amounts of change. I would state it this way. There used to be a time in my dad's generation, and he was with Sears for 44 years, you could kind of camp out in the status quo and do a little incremental tweaking here and there over the generations, over the decades, and you'd be fine. You'd make a lot of money. But now there's a serial killer on the hunt for every old legacy business, and it's called the status quo. And it is coming for you if you are slow moving. That is actually the reality of today. It's a little maybe heavy-handed way of saying it. Why? Well, what used to be a rounding error, you know, I know the former CEO of Blockbuster. He said, gee, we could have bought Netflix. We didn't become them. We could have bought them for $70 million. And we didn't, because we thought it was a rounding error on our business. We thought so many things would have to go right for that to matter to us. And so they carried on their way. But now it's not a rounding error. And what happens when, even though it's ineconomic for a lot of particularly legacy retailers that make money in this journey to online penetration, what happens when your best customers actually become the ones that are choosing that channel and that way of interacting with you? The ones you make the most money with, the ones that have nothing to do with where all your capital sits, which is in the ground across the country and geographies. So simply put, here's what's happening in retail. Stores, I get asked this question a lot in my work, do stores have a future? Well, of course they do. The role of them is changing. All the money in retail was right in the center. You know, big boxes that weren't particularly easy, and they weren't particularly experiential, but that's where all the dollars were, supermarkets and drugstores and fashion houses and so on. But there's this polarization going on, this, well, let's shrink the box, let's make the technology enable a much more efficient, and for purposes of illustration, I'm teasing them apart, but you know, even on the experiential side, we've got to make sure that we've got ease, transactional efficiency. That's almost a table stake, as I'll show you in a moment. But above all this is, of course, the cloud. And there's a new ecosystem being reset. Well, if all your capital is deployed in the old version of this from the 2.0 era, you've got to figure out, am I going this way? Am I figuring out the baseline? And by the way, where am I in regard to all that? You know, think about a board working with a leadership team that says, where do we put our capital today? This is something we experience in our work every day. Do we put it into the new, where we don't think the return is going to come for a while? Do we put it into the old, try to figure out maybe a new version of the old? Or do we sit tight and watch what happens? Those are the kinds of choices in today's reality. So I just wanted to give you that context, because this is what we get in the headlines. You know, started 2015, 16, 17, 18, you know, store closures. More and more of them coming. I get a daily report on store closures across North America, and it is a busy feed. But what is missed in all of this, which would suggest the role of the physical store is dead, is what's underneath it, which is not talked about. That for every retailer closing stores, there are 5 more that are opening stores. I was in Dallas, Texas last week. I'm in Galleria Mall, one of the largest malls in America. And in that mall are 8 new retail boxes, some from the pure play e-com world that have come to the ground because they've realized there's good economic sense in doing that. Other ones that are new formats from old retailers, and then complete disruptor startups. 8 of them that weren't there 18 months the last time I visited. So we just have to think about, this is just a moment in time where we're resetting the landscape of retail. What also is driving this is the emergence of DTC. You know, 5 years ago, if you wanted to buy a L'Oreal product, you had to go into a department store or a drugstore. Today, it's a growing part, the fastest growing part of their business to sell direct to customers, e-com. And you can just see the stats on the left that support that point. You know, half of manufacturers, CPG, are in it already, and a lot more are coming. So that has implications, of course, to retail, not only the role of the store, but also the competitive context. Imagine the folks I used to buy from. You know, I used to buy Nike and list it in my offering, and people would come to me because it's a great brand. And now I'm competing not just with, you know, 24 Nike flagships around the world. I'm competing with Nike itself, direct to consumers, bypassing me. Wow, that's a big shift. So today, it distills down to 2 things that we care about. These are the 2 things I care about and obsessed about, and retail leadership teams that are enlightened are obsessed about the same thing. Traffic, digital or physical or both. If you do not generate positive growth in traffic, you do not have a future. That's number 1. And when you are able to generate it, what you do with it is everything. And in fact, this is where I think a lot of technology, not just in the visibility of propositions and the commentary and the engagement and so on, but the ability to drive traffic to engagement and have that engagement loop back and drive more traffic. You know, the sales flywheel as we think about it. So we examine businesses that we may or may not help to reinvent, and we say, where are you in this context? your ability to generate net new interest. And guess what we see in most cases? What you sell, literally, what you stock as a retailer, matters almost infinitesimally small relative to who you are and how you engage. I can get what I want anywhere. If that is now the table stake, the new reality, interchangeability, what's the tiebreaker? The tiebreaker has to be engagement, and technology is playing an increasingly important role in that with data and so on. So, well, who are we chasing? I just want to touch on this. The ultimate consumer was an expression we came up with a short while ago, simply because what they want is the ultimate of everything. And this isn't a cohort, it's not a demographic. This is actually data supported evidence that says what the ultimate consumer wants is a mindset, and it's pretty simple. They want ultimate convenience. It was 7 clicks, and I got lost in the digital experience, and I want it to be 3, and I want it to be 1 click, and in fact, I don't even want any clicks, right? Next week delivery? No, I want this week delivery. No, I want 2-day delivery. No, I want 1-day delivery. I'm standing in a parking lot in Austin, Texas, in front of a Whole Foods store, now that Amazon owns them, and a big banner is being unfurled, and it says 2-hour delivery. Awesome. What are they going to do next? They're going to come in my home and start to cook for me. I didn't even know I wanted pasta, but they made it for me. There it is. So the world is changing, and expectations are driving the response, right? Ultimate choice. This is point 1 on the how do you win in an Amazon world? Sell things that people don't sell. Sell things that they can't get anywhere else. You know, choice that has to be meaningful. They want ultimate value, and by the way, they can price compare you in a nanosecond right in your physical box or online. They want ultimate personalization. The two sides of this coin are personalization in the sense of you know me, you have my data, tailor to me, assort to me. The other side of it is I don't want to buy the same running shoe that everyone else does. I want to have it this color, and I want this detail. And of course, we're seeing that. I remember in a retail conference about 3 or 4 years ago, one of the big retail leaders in the US stood up and said, the whole personalization thing, like with customizing product, that's just such a fad, right? And now, today, it isn't. There's entire propositions being built and enabled. So immediacy, as my 20-year-old daughter would say, I want what I want, and I want it now. That's as simple as it gets, Dad. And then lastly, experience. And this is the big one. In the context of, then in retail to 3.0 and what people are faced with now, here's what a lot of retailers are doing. They're going after this. There's a reason why this whole notion of experiential is becoming more important. It's because, do I need another suit, or do I want to take a trip to Coachella or go on that adventure, ride around the world? The dollars are shifting out of goods, and even though goods are growing at about plus 5% year over year, which is good news for people who sell them, the economy associated with experience is growing faster. It's growing 2 times faster. And depending on which study you look at, some are actually saying it's more. And this is dollars that would have been consumer goods shifting into travel, shifting into out-of-home meals. My good friend Hanif Harji's here, and he knows what those dollars look like when they come through the doors of his restaurants. And that is a choice that consumers are making because it matters to them that they can put themselves in an experiential box, a context, and oftentimes take a selfie and say, hey, I just experienced Patria. That's an important piece, but you'd look at this as a retailer and you'd say, those are dollars that aren't coming my way, unless you start to say, no, I want to become an experience. And this is what's happening in retail today. What is experience? I had a CEO ask me that like a month ago. Like, everyone's going to conferences talking about experience and the flagship this and that, but what the heck is it? Well, let's break it down. It's 5 things on a continuum from experience that lives in just ease of transaction, which can be rewarding, all the way to something bigger than that. Just a few examples to make that clear. Amazon Go is about fulfillment. Just simply, I love the poster in the window. It's not a come on in, we've got what you need. It's a just walk out with whatever you chose and you're on your way. Casper, essentially this is a fulfillment piece in the experience economy. It's just simply, here it is, boom, open it up, done. Keep going. One of the best players in terms of discovery is SEPHORA. You know, why do I keep coming back online and into physical stores? To buy things that I need? Yes, of course, but something more important, just to discover what's new and what might be new for me. Immersion. I took a cab from West Hollywood to Melrose, an Uber, and I've got the address, and I can spot the Glossier. Oh yeah, just leave me right here, because it's the one with the lineup. There are 75, mostly women, standing up to get into a Glossier pop-up store. And what are they going for? To pick the product and leave with it? You can't do that. You can't take any product out of the store. It's just simply an immersive experience. You know, it's happening more and more. So these are examples you may have thought about. Connect. Remember the 1.0 in retail? Humanity coming together to do something that's important to them, but part of it being the human interaction. This is what this is. Nike Run Club, and many, many other, REI, communities of people. Yesterday on the stage, Away. What's the valuation of Away based on a community strategy? I think it was $1.4 billion. Now, hopefully they can pay that out in their business model. WeWork would be the counter example of, you know, make sure you get the business model that goes with the community strategy. Peloton, who would have thought that bringing people together that aren't physically together is a powerful way to build a brand, but that's exactly what's happening with them. And then I think the ultimate in the experiential dimension or continuum is co-create. Lego's done it for a long time. You know, customers create worlds, they submit them, they get chosen, and if they get chosen and win, they get packaged up and sold as a Lego world that, you know, you created yourself. Amazing act of co-creation. Target, I don't know if you know this app, it sort of got broken to the public last year. In this case, a very small community, we don't know the exact number, but somewhere, call it, you know, in the thousands, not hundreds of thousands, can actually see what's new from Target's, not only merchants, but their designers, and have dialogue on, hey, I love that style. Had you ever thought of this? Maybe that Mother's Day thing comes with a slogan on the t-shirt. And this interactivity is unbelievably powerful. How much do you think that counts in terms of my assessment of Target as a brand if I'm somebody on the Studio Connect app? So it gives you a sense of, you know, how you can engage with customers and what retailers are trying to figure out today if the reason for their having stores at all is going away, right? I don't need to come to a store. Why do I go to a store? Well, here's something that is not missed. 70% of consumers who feel a connection to a brand, something more than just goods on offer and transactional ease, are going to spend twice as much, right? Our work with JOANN, we did a crazy thing in Columbus, Ohio. We took 20% of the selling space of a 45,000 square foot box, and we gave it over to community and teaching people things and connecting them with their communities, mothers and grandmothers and daughters, learning how to pass on, you know, time-honored traditions in crafting and sewing there in the box. Guess what happened? Time spent in the store went way up. Reasons to visit and therefore traffic, way up. Affinity to the brand, up. Basket size, up. 20% of the space, the merchants had a heart attack. You're going to take away 20% of our selling space. Guess what? No one needs it. I don't need a box full of stuff anymore. I can get that stuff easily. So just an example. And sales went through the roof, so much so that they're rolling it out across America. Staples, a little closer to home, University Avenue. If you get a chance to go to the brand-defining store of Staples Canada, there we worked with that leadership team to take an even crazier amount of space, 35%, a full third of that store, high-performing store, and gave it to a strategy that was about meaningful, purposeful engagement with customers on their journey. And the headline could be, how about this? We stop selling people stuff, and we start selling them things they care about even more. And guess what happens when you do? They buy more stuff, right? Unbelievable story. And more recently, in Lincoln Park, we were strategic creative advisors to Lululemon on their experiential store there. Does that look like a store full of stuff, racks of garments and so on? It's there, but people are coming for a different reason. They're engaging for a different reason. And imagine the emotional connection that when I'm on a wellness journey or a healthful fitness journey, I and having a relationship with a brand that gets that and that operates at a different level of purpose. So guess what? 63% of consumers believe that purpose-driven customer brands are for them. Okay, you can kind of see where this is going next. So lots of change in retail, lots of trying to figure out what is the new landscape, where do the dollars go? Stores that used to be here are now there. They're not as big as they were, they're not as small as they were, et cetera, et cetera. And more importantly, what's happening around them is all shifting. It won't take much more than another 5 years for everybody to either die or figure out how to thrive within that new landscape. But this is the interesting part for me. And I'm really excited to actually share this for the first time on a stage in Elevate. The context is that the relationship with brands historically is waning. So this is a study in 1997 that showed customers trusted and thought a lot about half brands. That number is plummeting. So what happens in a world where just doing what I do, making products, getting them to you efficiently, et cetera, price, value for money, doesn't work anymore? What happens is we create a new paradigm, a new framework to think about where are we on a ladder of a human engagement with customers. So as I say, first time ever, this is, you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. This is a hierarchy of human commercial engagement. And at the bottom is that world of ease and efficiency, and you have what I want, and I can get it exactly there. And there's still retailers today that think that this is a way to differentiate. It's not. It's just table stakes. It's the new normal, as we talked about. Emotional benefit doesn't have to be grand. It could be, gee, that sales associate made me feel good. Or somebody help me, maybe digitally help me, curate and get to a product that's uniquely me or personalized or whatever. It's a really nice dimension there, and it's been around a long time. But it's up here that we're starting to see a shift, and I'll show you few examples. A shared pursuit. I like to do things, a community of people that I hopefully connect with like to do the same thing. Above that is shared belief, the idea that what I value is actually similar to what that brand values. And then the highest order, the pinnacle of this stack is aligned purpose. I choose this brand consistently because it is me and I am it. It represents everything that I not only like to do, but what I believe in. And we now start to see the ladder that takes us up to that very highest order. And every business, if you lead a business, start to ask yourself, where are you in this dimension? So we saw not just pings, future tells of what's coming. We've seen some pretty profound things like the Dove, Real Beauty campaign around body image. And we can also see the opposite. We can see when brands are seemingly tone deaf to what's going on in the world today. This would be one of them. How about this one? It's not part of their marketing campaign. They just happen to have a stance, which is completely objectionable to me and a lot of other people, around homosexuality. Well, guess what happens? They continue to say, look, we are who we are, we believe what we believe, you don't have to shop with us. Protests, etc. They are not reactive, they're doing nothing. And what will happen is consumers will say, I either buy that, and I'm good with that, I don't buy that, I'm gonna make different choices, or I don't care. But just keep going and look what's happening in the world. This is tragic stuff, right? Like, you don't need me to tell you. I saw a commercial that made me weep at 7:30 in the morning the other day when I'm looking at it. It's a feed on the Sandy Hook Commitment Organization around, kids and what they're experiencing in schools today. Mass violence, et cetera, enabled by guns. Well, do you sit on the sidelines? Or do you do what Dick's Sporting Goods and say, we're not going to sell that stuff anymore? Walmart just recently said, please don't carry guns in our stores anymore. And by the way, we're going to stop selling handguns. That's a reaction to what's going on in the world. But I actually think, even though they might have been forced to go there, I think that leadership team, I'll give them full credit, are saying, look, even though there's a huge overlap with our customers, a lot of hunters in the Walmart community, we have to take a stand. And it will play out that some people say, that's outrageous, Second Amendment, whatever. I'm out. I'm going to shop somewhere else. Or they're going to say, I admire that brand for what they did. Patagonia, here's one that wasn't reactive, it's proactive. It's been part of their DNA for a long time. But guess what happens when this amazing young woman comes to New York City? Patagonia says, everyone, close the stores, close the offices. You're free to go and join the march because it's that important. It's who we are. So let me give you an example of a brand that I think, and it's a go-to in conferences and so on, that is reacting to what's happening in the world. Stats that say, I think Edelman's doing some really good insight work these days. Nearly half of all consumers believe that brands have better ideas for solving our problems than governments do. Wow, that's unbelievable. Nearly 2/3 of folks believe that they're going to either boycott or embrace a brand based on its social values and position. Now, the whole thing of CSR has been around for a while. Now it's actually starting to mean dollars. It's coming to land. So let's take Nike. Transactional benefit. They're doubled down on e-com, particularly in large centers around the world. Phenomenal what they're doing. And it's just, make it easy to get their product. Boom, boom, boom. Emotional benefit. By the way, do you want that product personalized? Would it be great to say something about you? That's there. Climbing the ladder. What else? Run club. Shared pursuit. I want to, Saturday morning, meet at the Nike store, go for a run with people. And by the way, I've got a Fitbit from Nike, and I'm tracking with them, and we're sort of competing on our journey, and so on. But what about this? Not a product mention, not a pitch, just simply a social stand. And guess what happened? The next 48 hours, people burning Nike running shoes, people buying Nike running shoes. Stock price goes like this, stock price goes like this. Sales go like this, and then they start to go like this. This is a brand that is taking a position in terms that are not value, they are values. So I don't think they're perfect. I think they're figuring out a lot of stuff, and they've got some issues to deal with, particularly with regard to women in their culture. But this is what a fully formed brand in the future looks like. And what I want to say is that while we're all freaked out if we're not Amazon, Amazon basically going to replace every retailer in the Western Hemisphere, and Alibaba's going to do it on the other side of the planet, let's just be clear on what they're doing. They're just resetting the platform and the pipes. Everyone will be there. There will be no differentiation a few years from now. So differentiation has to live above the baseline of transactional. That's the reality for retail. And there's a lot of evidence. My team had a hard time deciding which stats to put into this presentation because there's just so many now coming out, and it's turning into notions, to belief systems, to behavior, to pocketbook spending. So I like this one. 81% of consumers said they must be able to trust the brand to do what is right. 81%, interesting, of tech professionals said CEOs have a responsibility to engage in these kinds of issues. So Retail 4.0, what is it? It's this. What once was the value economy is the values economy. That's what's coming. And so we need to think about, as tech professionals, as leaders of businesses, as retailers and beyond, we need to think about where are we in this hierarchy. That is really the future. So then, now, and next, then was about, from beta to scale in retail, then a race to the new normal, which is going on today as we speak. And then finally, it's welcome to the values economy. That's where it's going. And I'll leave you just with the last thought. That's where the money's going. And what happens to commercial enterprises? They chase the money. So watch for that to come and figure out where you are. And the last thing, I'll quote Steve Jobs, because I loved in the launch of the first, I think it was the Lisa, or maybe the Mac, the future is indeed human. And that is where value creation will exist going forward. Thanks so much for your time.